Edition. I am Priscilla Regina Naloga. Onto our Kickstarter conversation, we get to look at dissecting the Auditor General's report and what this report actually signals for Uganda's economy regarding 2024. Now, every January, Parliament does receive the report of the Auditor General on the audited accounts of government for the previous financial year. The report contains audit findings on government consolidated financial statements and financial performance of public operations and corporations, state enterprises and companies in which the government has controlling interests. The Auditor General John Muwanga revealed that his office undertook the special audit of the salary, payroll and validation of government employees back in February 2023, and a total of 367 entities comprising of 162 ministries, departments and agencies, 176 local governments, as well as 29 other government organizations. To scrutinize the details of this report, we are joined by Mr. Julius Mukunda, Executive Director with CSBAG. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year, viewers.
Okay. We do have Allana Kembabazi joining us, also ISER Programs Manager. Good morning and good to see you in the new year.
Good to see you in the new year, which has started off quite rocky.
When you say rocky,
with the OAG findings, I mean, you just want a slow start into the year, but it's like bam.
Then it's going to be another fast-paced year. We also do have Mr. John Walugembe, Executive Director, also with the Small Medium Enterprises Federation. Good morning and Happy New Year.
Good morning and thank you for having me here, and Happy New Year to our viewers.
Okay. All right, so getting into the nitty-gritties, we have to make analysis of the Auditor General's report, financial year 2022-2023, and you get to see a lot of things that have been highlighted, starting with the consistent increase in the total debt, evidenced as in the increase of 107% in the 5 years, from 46 trillion shillings in the financial year 2018-2019, all the way to 96 trillion as of 30th June 2023. Now, these revelations definitely underscore the need for a comprehensive review of the financial practices and management within the government. But at the end of the day, I would like to first understand what you make of this Auditor General's report. Let me start with you, Mr. Mukunda.
Oh, I mean, the audit report is a condition by the Constitution of Uganda that every financial year we review and find out what exactly the government does in terms of public finance management, and it must be done by an independent person. That's the Auditor General. The Public Finance Management Act requires the Auditor General to conduct a financial audit of our activities as a government, but also the National Audit Act. And you can realize that from I think for the last 5-6 years, the audit report has increasingly becoming more detailed. It gives us more clue on what is going in detail. But also you have more of special audits where the Auditor General gets interested in a particular subject and digs further to understand what it is, and that's why we have now the revelation of the payroll mess that we are in. You have value for money audits to see whether actually what we are investing, we are getting the returns, and of course our usual financial audits on what is happening. But by and large is really it gives us sort of like a punch below the belt, because I really believe that we are progressing in a particular way, but you find that there are certain things you expect that to be done and not. For example, there's we have been talking about supplementary budgets, for example, and when they come, we are here, we oppose it, we tell people we don't need it, everybody says we need it, and guess what? At the end of the day, you are given a supplementary budget. The total budget is revised from 48 to 52 trillion, but at the end of the financial year, the actual amount of money that has been utilized is only 43 trillion. An indication that we never needed supplementary budget in the first place. It distorted the whole budget process, but we never even utilized it. So two things really come on that we have very poor at planning, and I think this is something that we need to appreciate, that we are very poor. We get back to the drawing board and build our capacity in planning. And secondly, for me really is that we need to fix the leakages into our system, because now I'm beginning to believe that really supplementary budgets are for eating money in public service, because otherwise what else would it be before? So fixing leakages and getting more discipline would be very, very crucial in terms of what we do as we go forward.
Okay, Allana, you do have ghost workers, something that has always come out as an independent report by the independent observers somewhere, somehow. More revelations have come through. For example, in the Ministry of Health, you do have underutilized drugs. Through education, you get to see that some of these courses our people are studying are no longer supposed to be existent in the first place. And so there's a lot of detail to the report, as Mr. Mukunda put it, that is rather revealing things that make you cry.
I think for me what was heartbreaking is, one, first of all, he emphasizes that our debt is not sustainable. We have been saying that as civil society, so it's, he says that. And then you come to health, and about slightly less than half of the vaccines bought by a World Bank loan expired. So like Julius is saying, what are we doing as a country? Like truly, what are we doing as a country? Because you are borrowing and then you're failing to utilize what you've borrowed, and the people who you're borrowing for are still in need, right? You get there, you look at recruitment in the health sector that we've been shouting all year. There was money for recruitment that was not utilized. And the position, so we've been here, and Ministry of Health has been telling us it's about money, but there is money they have not been using, right? And also when it comes to the debt situation, the health sector is very heartbreaking, first of all, because it has COVID vaccines expiring, it has ARVs expiring, and he tells you it's interrupting the life cycle. Then he talks about simple basic things, mixing expired drugs with non-expired drugs. I even got scared. I said, now if I go to a hospital, I have to check, how will I check the expiry date? A public hospital. And you I get the box of drugs.
How will you check it? Because if it's a vaccine, the only time you interact with it when it's in the syringe into your body. Stop.
But even simple things like mixing, you cannot separate them. But when we think about the debt issue, the only way we can get out of debt is actually to sufficiently mobilize domestic revenue and to utilize our resources expeditiously. On the revenue part, we are just letting minerals go out of our country untaxed. And he goes through a couple of them. Sometimes it's just a failure to harmonize the law. I think the excuses URA gives in these instances are just very heartbreaking, because as an organization that has talked a lot about curbing illicit financial flows, around really getting domestic resources. If we want that independence, Museveni is always talking about, we can do without these donors, we can do without these loans. Why are you letting minerals go out of your country just for? Particularly because we have made a real effort to step up our legislation. So that one there for me was completely inexcusable. Right now we need money more than ever, and it should be expeditiously addressed. And then of course on the expenditure, how do you have that many ghost workers? Like people, like sometimes this is just planned corruption.
It's okay to have ghost workers, but they shouldn't be that many.
There's things where you can say, there's things where you can say maybe we hadn't updated, someone died, we updated our payroll. But the numbers here are so many that it is clear it's a concerted attempt by people to just steal money, like they have planned the corruption. And so you're a country that is here, you're running, we need, World Bank is going to cut via indirect constraints. We need money, we need money, we need money. And your population, that's what hurts me, that Ugandans are still struggling. They're not getting the drugs in the health facilities. They're not getting the health workers. The public servants on this payroll, we got to forget public services and we don't see them.
You remind me of an investigative report by a journalist on a ghost health center in the west of Uganda.
Yes, exactly. And but now you see, this one was it was striking, because this is not the first time they've kind of verified, particularly with pensioners. If you don't know, for example, for pensioners, you have an annual, you have to proof of life thing you have to do. So there's ways in which you could catch this early, and I just think that it's good, well, I guess that he focused on this as well. He does talk about special audits that are coming up, value for money audits and others, and he mentions LUVOA. Remember, Parliament and a number of us have been talking about issues like LUVOA, and like Julia said, those become the subject of supplementary budgets. You have supplementary budgets that come in, they have either wage expenditure or they have LUVOA, or things which are not unforeseeable. So I'm glad and I'm really looking forward, because he said 2 weeks, and me, I noted that date down, although I didn't want to start my year with all of this caveat, but now that it's out, let it come out. I believe what is hidden shall be exposed, and I want Ugandans to take interest. Yes, the report it may not be available to you fully, maybe it's online or it's long, but when you hear these things, you ask your leaders about them. You guys, you are going to have to pay back this money, and for the young people in particular, I feel sorry for you, because you are not getting healthcare now. Education, like you said, we can talk about the issues with the costs there and all of that, and then you're going to be taxed so much to pay back this debt. If you don't start asking questions now, we're in trouble. And I think it just also reflects, I'll say that one thing, it reflects for me the state of society right now. We're talking about now, and one of the things I was talking about with someone this morning here was, you see that government, if it decides, can do things quickly and cheaper and can move, but it has decided not to. Right? And when they decided, for example, have the ambulances packed at, for example, people said, but as you cater to our visitors, how about us, the people? Now, when you come back to the OAG report, I think it just shows you all the reasons why government has chosen not to. It is not that we don't have money. It's a political choice and a failure of governance and leadership here to actually make sure we get these services.
Mr. Walugembe, looking and analyzing the report on behalf of the business community, investment community, as well as the entrepreneur community, what do you make of this report from where you sit?
Well, I think first of all, it's a good thing that there's a mechanism for government to check itself, because if you don't self-reflect, then it means that it's easy to say, oh, those people are complaining because they are not informed and so on. So when this report comes out, I think it provides an objective basis for all of us to say, come on, what can we do better? For instance, if you look at the total budget for the previous financial year, they were projected to, the projected revenue was about 48 trillion. 0.132, then the increase is about 48.136, but the expenditure was increased to 52 trillion, and already there was a deficit of about 4 trillion shillings. Now, as Julius has mentioned, in the end, they ended up spending less. But actually, when you look at what they actually spent, they spent more on recurrent expenditure and spent less on development expenditure. So it means that where it matters for the citizens and businesses, less was spent. Where it matters, you know, for wages and so on, more was spent. If we look at the issue of the parish development model, as you know, has been one that government has prioritized to lift about 39% of those living in abject poverty and in the subsistence economy to the money economy. That's about 3.5 million households. Now, it's found that about 604 beneficiaries received money either for non-existent projects or ineligible projects. So it means that we may be spending money on something that we hold dear, and we'll agree it's very important, but it must be done right. It shouldn't be a vehicle for people to siphon off our resources from the taxpayer. Now, we also have the issue of these ghost workers, about 10,192 ghost workers. And as she mentioned, how can you have so many ghost workers, yet you have head counts, you have what not, I hear audit for having to report and stuff. So IT systems that have been introduced, so we need to investigate this further. In this day and era, we should, because you have national IDs, we have all these things. In that age, you can't really talk about, these are stories of the 90s. Yeah, these days you can't talk about ghost anything. The numbers were lower than what. Yeah, these days you can't talk about ghost anything. So maybe that's something also that that we ought to address. Now, if we look at the issue of the public debt, the public debt is growing at about 107%, as you've mentioned. It's now 96 trillion, and it's growing more than the GDP, which is growing at about 39%. So for the viewers there, I'll tell them that if you're in your household, someone is borrowing more than their salary. They are earning 100,000, but this year they go and borrow 200,000. The year they borrow 300,000. So that's something that we ought to address. And the driver of this borrowing is we are spending more than we are bringing into domestic revenue. Now many people say, let's increase domestic revenue mobilization. Definitely, but what of cutting expenditure? Because that's the easier bit. Let's first start by cutting expenditure, because it's much easier to cut expenditure than to raise our revenue, especially in a difficult economic environment as you are in. So there are a lot of issues, but what we also don't want as a business community is for us to, Ugandans, once it becomes a topical issue like now, everyone talks about Auditor General's report, and then that's it. We wait for the next year and the same stories come up. So if we can have a matrix of actions, now the Speaker received the report, good. What is Parliament going to do? We don't just want to media appearances in COSA say, hey, you, and then that's it. No. Let's have a matrix to say of the 100 issues that are raised, this is what is going to be done to ensure that they are addressed.
Okay.
I think that's a better way of assessing this report.
All right, so that is the simple assessment of the Auditor General's report. Now we're going to let you digest on some of those points. When we return, we get into the nitty-gritty, starting with the public debt.
You're watching Morning at NTV.
The Auditor General's new report has left observers in very deep reflection, as a huge chunk of the entire revenue collection may end up into debt servicing.
I've been mentioning 86%. I mean 86 trillion. But the figure has gone to the books and it's now 96 trillion as of June 2023. So if I'm going to count all the loans we have had from June 2023 up to now we are above 100 trillion. So I think he's very right, because when I reflect on the total sum of debt service for the next financial budget, I begin to feel the pinch. Because out of the 52 trillion, 23 trillion is for debt servicing. And so basically it is like our projection is 29 trillion to collect taxes. Our debt is 23 trillion. So when you subtract 23 from 29, you remain only 7 trillion. So as the government of Uganda, we should be having a budget of 7 trillion only. And that cannot be equivalent to any departmental budget.
There is debt that has been contracted because SMEs are provided goods and services to government. Now, there is debt that has also been contracted through quota awards and these kinds of things. So for me, I wouldn't prioritize that. I would instead prioritize this money that businesses have used to supply me goods and services. Why? Because these businesses are essentially lending to me at zero interest rate. Yet they are borrowing money from banks where they have to pay interest of above 20%.
Fiscal indiscipline, budget experts say, is the picture painted by the Auditor General's report released yesterday. According to the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group, findings in the document risk undoing costly public finance management reforms recently undertaken by government.
But you have supplementary budgets that contain salaries of people. And you begin to ask yourself, what kind of an accounting officer budgets for other things but not salary for his employees? That's high level of indiscipline. But now the Auditor General is saying actually that last year we had a budget of approved budget of 48 trillion. But because of supplementary budget, we revised and made it 52 trillion. Now, sad to say that even 58, we were only able to consume and use 43. So we never needed a supplementary budget in the first instance. because even the amount of money available will not finish it without a supplementary budget. So these are some of the things we say we need to have tighter fiscal rules to manage our budget.
This story of ghost workers has been here for a very long time. And you know, we've now created IT systems, we've verified civil servants, we've asked teachers to register. How is it that this problem persists? Is it that there's some kind of cartel that is benefiting from these kinds of situations? So maybe these are things that ought to be looked at in more detail. Maybe the IT systems we thought would help us to, and the head counts and so on, are not the correct solutions. Or maybe they are the correct solutions, but they are not enough. You know, so these are all things that need to be addressed. Then the other issue is around negligence, because now he mentions that about 5 million COVID-19 vaccines expired while in stock. How can this be? You know, we spent lots of money.
Another disturbing reality about project financing and execution. 22 projects sampled by the Auditor General found and disbursed loans of up to 118 billion shillings, with commitment and interest fees already being paid.
35% of the projects we have do not have concept notes. 32 have no profile.
For now, according to experts, the state of affairs is that Uganda's debt refinancing risk is getting out of hand. 5 years ago, it was 3 trillion shillings. The new estimate is 9 trillion shillings for the next financial year. The question is, with interest rates rising, will Uganda be able to pay back and later on extend services to her 46 million people? Malcolm Sime, NTV Tonight, Business.
Will Uganda be able to pay back and at the same time ensure that there's effective and efficient service delivery to her 46 million Ugandan shillings? We do have Julius Mukunda here, whose hat went out. Because the figures he's been working with were 86 trillion shillings, but the revelation of 96 trillion shillings of public debt shocked him and made his heart want to jump out and leave him alone. Now this is comprising of a domestic debt of 43 trillion Ugandan shillings, as well as an external debt stock of 52 Ugandan trillion shillings. Mr. Mukunda. Has your heart settled now?
No,
have you come to terms?
Is it now sitting up and down?
It's no, I mean, you can't. You really can't. When you get to further internalize these figures and understand when you get the numbers and you want to put some meat on them and say, where is this money? Where is this money that we have accumulated quite all this time? And yes, I had known the 86 trillion. But now we have 96, and if I add the recent supplementary budget that we are going to borrow, now we are 100 already. But should that, so my issue actually is that, okay, fine, we can acquire this. But you see, there are two things you need to understand. The way you utilize it, and the way you utilize it is going to be dependent on how you acquired it. So, how is a project brought in the government, and the Auditor General is telling us, and I'm now beginning to know why our project is stalling. And the Auditor General is saying that 35% of the projects do not have concept notes, 39 lacked project profiles, and 32 did not undertake feasibility studies. Now, to an ordinary person, just to understand this, is that when you're going to start a project, you sit down and say, I'm going to build a road. And this is going to have these kilometers. It is going to from Masaka to Mbarara, for example. And this is how these are the people who are going to be affected. These will be the beneficiaries. This is what is going to cost me. You put everything down, and then you start the process of acquiring the loan. Now the Auditor General is saying we don't have that. We just say we need a road. and we get the money.
But then how do we get the money when we've not given those details? On
No,
what
it is
spending
internal.
we
I mean, if you write a very nice proposal, and some of these, that's why we say we used to have these computer.
which is an indicator of a loophole, really.
So it's serious loophole. It's very serious loophole. So that's why I've been given an example of the tree. We've talked about the UNRWA tree. If we had prepared for the project very well, we would have known that there is a tree, not the normal tree, but a spiritual one. That before you even acquire a loan from the bank, from outside, you would have already compensated the people of the tree.
Study would have been made.
But when they saw a tree, they thought it was a normal one. They called the valuer to come and evaluate it, to value it, and he said he calculated the number of timbers that are required to come out, and he gave them the amount. But little did he know that the tree was a spiritual tree. He needed a formula, a spiritual formula for the tree. So and the incidents delays the project, so the project cannot deliver. And that's why now the Auditor General is telling us that when he sampled 28 projects, he found out that these projects did not utilize 777 billion Ugandan shillings. You sign, but you have the money is still there. You haven't touched it. But furthermore is that he sampled another 27 projects, and he found that they had failed to absorb 118 billion. UNRWA itself has an disbursed loan of 456 million United States dollars. When you bring all of these together, it tells you that we run to sign contracts, we are not ready. Even when we get the money, we can't utilize it because we have these spiritual roads that cannot help us. So that's why in Jinja Kampala Express Highway cannot take place because we were not prepared. That's why in PG Busega Highway we talked about 5 years ago is still in limbo. It can't work simply because we are not prepared to execute it. So to an ordinary person, when you say 96 trillion, it boils down to, okay, how am I going to be affected as a person and as an individual? And there is one way. The minister has said broadly, and I have liked him this time, by the way. He has come to say the truth. He said, yes, I have a budget of 52 trillion Ugandan shillings to spend in the next financial year. But the money available for me to spend on Ugandans is 21. The rest is for debt servicing. And that's why I was telling people the formula, say, fine. If you have more than almost the entire half of your money on debt servicing, and you can only collect 29 trillion, probably the money available for you is 7 trillion Ugandan shillings that you're going to spend on. So it means that forget about medicines, forget about new schools, forget about water points, because government right now, the debt has constrained it, and God forbid we shouldn't have another disaster, because it would be extremely very difficult for us to address to that. Therefore, let us right now take the hard questions and say there are certain things you are going to postpone or don't talk about anymore in the budget. Cut the budget. Say money for monitoring cabinet decisions, it is very important to monitor that. We know. But can we do it next year?
And the monitoring, for example, the 2 billion that was going to monitor the Luwa project?
Yes, this Luwa project, we know it has problem, let us leave it out. Issues to deal with creation of new districts, let us stop on that one. But also let us be very frank and candid and say we can't manage the public sector we have to spend on. And say fine, instead of buying SUV vehicles, these Porsche vehicles for our former employees because they're entitled to, we could buy Rawums.
What's match up with developed countries?
No,
they do the same.
We are coming down to say now, as of now,
a picture,
drive a Rawum car for in the military.
You don't drive a Rawum car yourself. Why do you want your former?
Because we don't have the money. So really, for me, is for government to really, and parliamentarians to come down and say, let's take the hard question and say this is what I won't spend on, and this is what I want to spend on.
Allana, implications on the economic development.
So there are two things. One, again, the real cost is going to go to Ugandans who are not going to get healthcare education, because right now it has already happened. We're already spending more on servicing our debt than our health education. We've been shouting, and it shows a fundamental flaw with how we assess our debt. So when the loan request comes, when you're talking about the debt, we have been talking about it in purely economic terms, right? You look at things like the balance of payment, like will we be able to pay our creditors? But we never think at what cost. Like, if you're paying your creditor when you don't have beans in the house, then there's a problem with how you are assessing your ability to gain more debt. So I'm glad he's saying that, and he also points out something quite worrying, which is that as we accumulate this debt, it will likely get worse, because now the interest rates, if you start going above 50%, right, are going to get higher because people are scared you won't be able to pay, which will mean you'll even have more debt. The fact that there's a lot of domestic debt is very concerning. It means government is just crowding out the private sector, because why would you lend to the private sector when you can lend to government? You always want usually to lend to government if you are a bank. So we're quite worried about that, and I would say that again, for me, it comes down to how do you get out of this situation. I keep getting back to domestic revenue mobilization. I know we've talked about, and Julius has completely, and I completely agree with everything he has said around cutting our spending and being realistic, but we're also playing around with domestic revenue mobilization. This report talks about tax waivers, and it talks about the fact that there's quite a bit of tax waivers. We waived 1.293 trillion was waived under the Gazette, but overall it was 1.417 trillion. And he said he wasn't quite clear, besides the 1.293 which was waived under the Gazette, he wasn't quite clear how the others were communicated to Parliament. Because you were asking, how do you get into this situation, right? Where is Parliament? Where are our people who we sent to look into this matter? And even some of the taxes that are being waived, they're not being communicated to Parliament. Number two, when you think about things like loans, how they get approved, the process becomes chop. So no one is asking all these critical questions, and they just approve as no rubber stamping. So there's a real issue there. And then he talks about the fact that, okay, if you're going to say we have waived all this money in taxes, what is the benefit to Ugandans? And most of these enterprises have not increased their workforce. They're supposed to employ more staff, but they say that most of them are performing below the 50% threshold. And they say the fact that the ministry is operating outside a framework, and we have really, as ISER, gone on about tax waivers. We say, as long as you keep giving tax waivers to certain companies, particularly multinational companies, ordinary Ugandans are paying the cost. One, you're coming and squeezing those of us you can get in the system for even more. But number two, if you're not seeing the trickle-down effect to the economy, to hiring more people, then you are losing money that you should be using for healthcare and education, and therefore having to resort more on borrowing to make up for that shortfall. So I think there are the domestic debt situation here, I really liked how he painted it. It is of no shock to us. We have been saying that government should have a human rights impact assessment of debt, which means that you are looking at your ability to meet your creditors' needs, but you're also looking at the other issues of, one, is there participation, is there access to information? Do people, like the members of parliament, do they have the full information they need to pass these loans? Number three, what is the impact on citizens? What is the impact on your private sector? So we've been asking for a more robust assessment of how we look at our loans, and we hope that government will wake up to this. I am so glad to see this, because in five years ago, ISER was expressing concerns about the direction, and we've seen that in 5 years 107%, right, increase. Like, it's literally like, it's crazy, and I hope that this time government wakes up.
All right, Mr. Walugembe, this leaves you in a hot seat, focusing on debt utility as well as the tax waivers that she has mentioned. Some unknown to maybe our legislative house, intentionally or unintentionally, but also maybe there's something to consider about, perhaps because of let me just say it as it is, perhaps there's ignorance in some parts of the room on which they can actually play on. They don't need that information. They won't understand that information to make the informed decisions thereof. So at the end of the day, we still have to ask ourselves, how do we manage our public debt and have healthy financing?
Okay, so I think first of all, we are reading from different scripts. I was looking at government undertook what they call a debt sustainability analysis to see how are we doing on our debt. And they said our public debt, whereas our public debt is projected to increase in the next 2 years, debt levels remain manageable and below those in most countries. In addition, a reliance on mostly concessional financing has helped ensure that debt remains sustainable. So what you see is a very nice picture. If I'm the finance minister and you bring me this debt sustainable analysis report, I'll say, definitely, let's borrow more. So so on one hand, the Auditor General is saying our debt is sustainable. On the other hand, the mainstream ministry is saying, well, it's manageable. We are doing better. You know, it's like you are a second last. It's like being a second last in class and say, but I'm not the last. There are some people that are below
our neighbors.
So I think that is. So for me, that is. So that is definitely a problem with regard to debt. There are two things. One. As a country, it's not true that we are now relying mostly on concessional financing. As you know, the World Bank has indicated they are not presenting any projects. Now, for a country like Uganda that has been benefiting a lot from the kind of concessional financing that only the World Bank can offer, if they pull out, then you are actually in a much worse situation. I expect that the next year's report from the Auditor General will be worse because you find yourself in a very difficult situation. What do you then do? You then have to borrow domestically, or you have to borrow money from shady lenders. Those shady lenders are the kind that would look at the Uganda Airlines Boeing parked in Dubai and they capture it. You see? So this is the position, and Ugandans have to mentally prepare themselves for it, because if you're not cutting your expenditure, it means you have to borrow more. Now, on the issue as she's mentioned, of domestic revenue mobilization, ultimately, if you want to increase domestic revenue mobilization, you have to ensure that the private sector is growing, because it's that private sector that is going to give you this money. And so for me, the competitiveness of the private sector should be something that ought to be prioritized. Secondly, we need to ensure that we are more careful when we are giving out these incentives, this relief, these tax waivers, all these things. And the unfortunate thing is that these are the SMEs that are benefiting from this.
That's the unfortunate thing.
It's the multinationals and the so-called investors that are benefiting from these waivers, and they don't need them anyway, because research has shown that any serious investor's consideration is not a tax waiver or a tax incentive or any incentive for that matter. Because I can't be a serious investor and I want free land. I can't be a serious investor and I want free money. Some come with nothing. They give them the land, they give them the money, so
are you an investor?
I am a domestic investor. Thankfully, these days the president is convinced that we are domestic investors. Initially he wasn't.
You are nothing at all in the first.
These days he invites us. We had a meeting with him. I think Allana Kembabazi has helped a great deal in this regard. So we had the meeting the other day, and he was really engaged with us. So the point therefore being, we must ensure that our private sector grows and our private sector is able to pay the right money. Now, after the money is collected, it must also be spent well. And those are the questions that we have. Because when we ask, okay, how is our money being spent? You are a SSR, our role is to collect. Our role is to collect. Then the Auditor General, my role is just to check. Then you ask Parliament, our role is to oversight. So now, who should we ask about? So we must get someone ought to be accountable for these things, and that's why I'm saying it's nice to have the report, but it's even better if we come up with actual solutions and say, let's solve this. And people shouldn't, the government officials shouldn't say that people in civil society and business are pointing and choosing fingers. No, we're in the same boat. We're all Ugandans and want the best for this country. So we should look at this as a point of reflection to say what improvements can you make? Because, for instance, these COVID vaccines, this was a World Bank loan.
Ridiculous.
No, if it was our own money, that's fine. But it was a World Bank loan, so it means we are going to...
I wouldn't even get most. It would be sad for me that our own money even is...
No, it's still, no, our own money is bad enough.
Mr. Mukunda sad again. Let's move away from the subject.
But there is a point I think on revenue that there's something that shocked me, that these gold exporters refused to pay.
Yeah, and it's there. It's
I was asking myself, fine, how can I do that? Because really we are being overtaxed. So how can I do that and simply I'm being refused and it's too much. Can we I'm not paying.
Not even I am not paying. Period.
Can we first negotiate the rate?
The same should be extended to the other,
the kind of negotiating power they have is really...
They have gold. What do Ugandans, normal Ugandans have? And again, this is another debate that we can't put to bed today or now. The causes of debt burden have been mentioned. The implications thereof have also been shared. But the question still remains, how do we have and build a resilient public debt for us as a country? We'll leave it at that. When we come back, ghost workers.
You're watching Morning at NTV.
Ekyalo ekitali mu busikwasikwa kizikirira n'asenga ku kiggwa yakumira lubaala omuliro.
Tutayenda kwogerebwa bitono nnyo si bingi.
Gy'oli eyo eriyo ebikunyiga bingi bye wandyagadde okwogerako oba oliawo bikyukeko.
Naye gavumenti etuyambe. Abasawo ba wano ebintu byekalamye, enguudo temuzifaako, omwoza omusolo gulagawa.
Wabula obuliddwa bw'ositula eddoboozi lyo lituuke ku be kikwatako.
Nzize ku Giant baŋŋamba polling station ya gye nnolonderako yeeno, nabo bangobyewo siina kulonderawo.
Akanyomero ko akayogera naffe kakomyewo.
Beeyi y'ebintu bannange.
Oda ku sabbuuni yeekayeeka.
Tukyaseevinga na ssente, abakazi baagala kunoba.
Era akadde konna tuli baakukutuukako ku kyalo kyo oteese ku bikuluma. Byabufuzi, byanfuna, byamaka oba ensonga endala yonna.
Abakyala bamu ekireeta obuzibu tebakola. Ate batwongeze ne ku ssente z'akameeza kati batulekera obusente butono ebintu bya bbeeyi.
Gwe batakigambye yagamba nti gundi atadde ebigambo ebibyo byogere naffe.
Tusaba bwenkanya.
Buli lwakuna ku NTV akawungeezi yogera naffe.
We also encourage you to continue reporting some of the things that are not good on the roads. The traffic violations that you meet on the roads, please, it's very, very important for us to keep on sharing. These days we have very many platforms that have helped us to move information from point A to point B or from different sources to other sources. So let us use, for example, WhatsApp to report all these things that are not good, because if we keep quiet about these things, they are the ones which are going to cause accidents on different roads.
This message was brought to you by NTV Uganda. On the next episode is brought to you by
Wefunireka Honor at an outlet near you.
On the next
With 3 delicious flavors in 300 ml and 500 ml bottles, there's an Honor for everyone. Wefunireka Honor at an outlet near you.
Babe, more Honor please. But won't get an Honor.
Freshness you can taste.
You're watching Morning at NTV.
It's Morning at NTV. Stephen Imbido from FSMES coming to you live from Queensway. This is just next to Entebbe Road. You can see the beautiful flyover here at next to the clock tower, heading towards Zambia and heading towards the city center. Already, people are enjoying the beauty of the flyover. Many of them I've seen taking selfies as they connect from either Zambia or Chibuye to this side near the fire brigade headquarters, and it's easier for them and it's also safe for you to use that side of the flyover other than crossing in the from the mid of the road, because you never know, any road crash you could be the next victim of a road crash. But let me begin by telling you the flow of traffic is really so free and fast flowing, coming from the city direction of Kampala Road, connecting towards in Zambia, as well as coming from Zambia traffic lights, joining this Queensway. You only be losing 3 minutes from Zambia traffic lights to this flyover project that's still under construction. There are some other staff that are contracted to do some beautification and the roadworks here, as well as the team that is coming from UNO is also here still to make sure that they do the inspection and supervision of the works that are ongoing, as we know that's also having a few days to the Non-Aligned Movement Summit and G77 plus China that's happening next week. For the next 2 weeks we shall be engaged. But also for you who is coming from Entebbe Road, as you get towards this flyover just under, that's where you're going to be finding the heavy traffic congestion, looking at towards the side of Shell near the Queensway, as well as that side of Samarian Road, connecting you towards the the old tax park. Here the flow of traffic is a bit slower, but still you can wait for those 5 minutes because the traffic officers are on the ground making sure that yes, you access either Kampala Road or that side of the old tax park much faster. I'm going to be engaging Alan Kembabazi, the Corporate Affairs Director of Uganda National Roads Authority, on the progress and how much they've been able to carry out on this project since 2019. First of all, I should tell you, Alan, that I'm impressed by the way people are enjoying the other side of the flyover, getting down, because I know around this place, Boda riders are so rowdy. Anyone can be a victim of the road crashes, but I'm impressed with the way people are using that flyover. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Stephen. Good to see you today.
See you too. First of all, bring us to speed. Yes, I know some people were able to watch the news yesterday, but at least for now, I can see vehicles being turned towards this side. Is it going to be the same way all through?
You know, the advantage this project comes with are the widened lanes, that we have added lanes than we had previously. So we are able to move traffic at any one point in any one lane, depending on the gymnastics of the traffic flow in this area. So this is why you see we have the liberty to put you on this lane and take you on another, because we now have widened or added lanes on the Kampala flyover corridor.
But isn't this so dangerous? Because if you can see the border riders crossing from that side, even these vehicles, instead of continuing this lane, they're now turning to this other side, which is supposed to be carrying people coming from Kampala Road. Isn't this dangerous?
The good thing is it's guided. It's guided. We have a traffic controller here. We also have traffic police, so at any one point they can guide you depending on the flow of traffic in this place. The beauty again is we have now a wider space within which to move traffic. Just like you see for the pedestrians over there, they also have now a wider space within which to move and flow. So they're able to cross from the other side to these ends without interrupting with the traffic flow, especially vehicular traffic along the flyover corridor.
One can see people using the flyover and the vehicles moving in a free flow to the city. But we would wonder how much is left of this project that you began in 2019.
Okay, we are nearly complete. The project is now at 93%. What we are left with are the final works, beautification. We're going to put traffic signals within this intersection. We are finalizing with the lighting. The entire corridor is supposed to be lit. So we're doing the final touches on the project. As you can see, the city can now breathe. The objective of this project is now met, that is to decongest the CBD, and we've opened up the place to traffic. So we're nearly complete.
And then crossing from this side of the Queensway to Ginger Road, that is still part of your work. What is at stake now? Are we opening that side also soon?
Which side exactly?
And from this side, crossing towards Zambia and then joining Ginger Road, when are you beginning on the works connecting to Jinja Road. That is the Kampala-Jinja Highway.
Oh yes, that is the second lot of the project. Because this is the first lot of the project. But we also have another that will kick off from Mukwano, where this one has stopped. And it will take over up to Kidigum House, expand around the former Electoral Commission offices, and then pour into Wapewa Avenue. And from there is where the Kampala-Jinja Expressway will then start. So that is, we're now in financial discussions with the financing partners to see that they can quickly come on board and that project commences as soon as possible.
This place is going to be so busy beginning from this weekend. I know the some advanced teams are coming in for the two important summits. That is the Non-Aligned Movement Summit, but also the G77 plus China. How I know you're working with police, KCCA, and other agencies. First of all, tell us the plan about, for someone who is just watching us now, the plan of this place as we head into these meetings.
Yeah, first of all, to update you, is traffic has been opened to use this section for the entire project of the Kampala flyover. So if you're coming from, say, the city center and you're heading to, say, Gaba Road on Zambia, you actually can, you only use the downer lanes. You know, there are widened lanes that you can actually use. And if you're heading to Zambia, you go on top of the underpass, then turn on the right to go to Zambia Gaba Road. But again, if you're coming from the city center and you want to proceed to Mukwano, you again have two options. You can either choose to go under the underpass, the tunnel road, or again stay on the lanes, on the left side of the lane and proceed up to Mukwano, Chibuli, and Jinja Road.
Okay. I've seen also the tunnel, beautiful as it is. I know the viewers are not able to see the tunnel now, but at least some have seen it on your Twitter handle, but also they can just face it when they come towards this side. Maybe explain to us, how should they use the tunnel, from which side to which side?
It's an amazing facility we have, first of its kind and of that design. It's 360 meters long. We are also making efforts to ensure that the tunnel is safe, because one of the concerns for our road users has been the safety of that tunnel road. But to assure you, we'll have the tunnel lit 24/7, because during the day the tunnel is still dark, and as you know, light is only at the end of the tunnel. So within the tunnel it's dark, so we'll keep it lit all through the day and at night to ensure that it's safe. We'll also have surveillance cameras around it, again to guarantee safety of the road users. That tunnel can only be used by people going to Mukwano and Jinja Road.
Even the pedestrians?
Let me also come to that. But also if you're coming from Mukwano and say Jinja Road, you can use the tunnel to join the city center, but also proceed to Entebbe. There are restrictions to use of the tunnel bridge or the tunnel structure. I want to say that the tunnel is going to be restricted to use by motorcycles, famously known as boarders, tricyclists, perhaps tukutukus, and bicycles as well, and the cyclists, plus pedestrians. Those are restricted from using the underpass section of the flyover.
Alan, I want to go back to studio, but one last thing is this place is known for as a clock tower. That's the significant thing that comes into one's mind whenever you talk about this place, the clock tower. We can see the pillars, I should call it a pillar maybe, but the clock is not yet here. Any plans that the clock is coming back anytime soon?
Indeed, like you said, it's one of our big monuments that Kampala is known for, and we're going to bring it back. Already the structure is up. What is left are a few implements to be added in, and including the clock itself. And we're going to have a replica clock put back, as you know, the older one, we didn't find the older clock in there, but we found a few implements of the older clock. But very soon we've already ordered for it and will be put in. The final word is to call upon road users to exercise caution when using the Kampala flyover. For pedestrians, if you intend to cross, please utilize the pedestrian bridges that have been put on the road. Do not cross or interfere with the traffic, vehicular traffic. We've made provisions. We've now put wider walkways, but also let's utilize the pedestrian bridges to cross from one side to the other to avoid accidents.
Thank you so much, Allana Kembabazi, the Corporate Affairs Manager at the Uganda National Audit Authority. I have now turned you back to studio. You've heard it all from him, and the keyword is exercise caution as you use this place. The footbridge is there for you. Stephen in the middle of FSMES Chibuga, handing you back to Priscilla Regina and Naroga in the studios.
All right, thank you so much, Stephen Bide, for giving us that update on the official opening of the Kampala flyover within the central business area, that is the Queen's Way. However, it still speaks into what debate we've been having here, analysis of the Auditor General's report, and I'd like to get a reaction from each one of my opponents this morning. Let me start with you, Mr. Walugembe.
Okay.
We have a...
So first of all, I wonder why they call it the flyover project, because what I saw is walkways, walkovers and so on. Yes, there's a tunnel and so on, but you know, for anyone who has been traveled and understand, if you go to the Thika Express Highway, and if you go to Johannesburg and so on, you know what a flyover is, of course. So I think that the name for me would have been more appropriate, maybe a walkover or underway or whatever, so that we don't raise expectations. Because now here what we are resolving is the pedestrian problem, but as far as I know, the issue is not the pedestrian problem, the issue is the traffic. And looking at what I've seen this morning, I don't know, it will be a miracle that will solve the traffic problem, but let's hope for the best. But that's my sense.
All right, Allana?
On the walkway.
On the flyover.
On the flyover. I was just telling you this. I think we should be getting back to discussing more serious things. Like, I'm sorry.
Project analysis.
I just don't. You know, there are certain things where, like, I'm glad it's pretty, it's white, but I just don't know that they are so significant to Ugandans right now. Ugandans have been shouting about healthcare, potholes, industrial area, if you can just fix industrial area, certain things. So I think that's where my sentiments on this are. Like, it's nice, it's okay, it's there. But there are more pressing issues for me as a country.
We're coming to the pressing issues of ghost employees. Mr. Mukunda, you had alluded earlier to some of the causes of public debts, mentioning how we bid and get this financing, and it's just a very the way it was presented in the Auditor General's report. We miss out the important elements in getting this money. We get the money and then we remember, oh, we should have. When Kembabazi was asked what next, he said, no, we're looking for financing to complete, do this. Just talk to this and they sign and we continue.
No, I mean, it's, this project started in 2019.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to calculate in 19, 20, 1, 2.
Old news.
And it would have actually continued if it was not for NAM to quickly beautify it.
It was a 3-year project. But it tells you project management in this country is still a very big challenge. Executing on time and on budget, because we have so much overruns in some of these projects. But also he's telling you that no, we have not done this because we are negotiating with a financier to see how we can fix it. And then you ask yourself if this is a part of a strategic plan in terms of how to solve the traffic problem in this country. But you ask about the payroll management, the ghost workers.
Yes.
Yes, I think for me is it is very simple. Is that we've come a long way, and we've discussed here that in 90s and 80s, I mean, you know, if you could talk about this, you could understand. But this is a period now where we have systems, we have IT. People have gone to school. We have best examples on how other countries have done that. But you still find that consistently, in the Auditor General's report, consistently, there has been ghost workers or government employees. And for me is that if you're an accountant, if you're a head teacher of a primary school, and you don't know how many teachers you have, then you should be fired immediately. If you're a permanent secretary of a ministry, and you don't know the number of employees you have in your ministry.
Active employees, because when you say employees, it could refer to the dead, to the abscond.
No. Employees means those who come to work
who are alive,
those who have your contracts, and you don't know them. You need to be fired, because if you can't know your employees, you can't implement a project. For heaven's sake, you just cannot. And I can assure you, it's not about ghost employees. It's now going to be about ghost health centers. As of today, I've never received an official communication from the government that Ntungamo does not have ghost health centers. I went to a local government budget consultative meeting in Mbarara specifically for that, and I raised the question. The chairperson was there, the chief administration officer was there, nobody would answer that. An indication that these, as of today, these ghosts exist. Not only in Ntungamo, I believe the whole country has got health centers. My fear is this goes to ghost schools, this goes to ghost roads, this goes to ghost water points, and this goes to ghost medicines and all the service delivery points we have in this country. And to me, to deal with this ghost people, their business is to deal with accounting officers. You cannot be a chief administrative officer and you don't have a list of health centers in your district, and you don't have an active payroll of the people you have in your district and you can vouch for them. If you don't have that, for heaven's sake, be relieved of your duties and let somebody competent take over. So we should not bring politics into this. This is a question of management and competence, that those who can't do it step aside and let those who can do it do it. Lastly for me is the question of syndicate. You cannot appropriate for a health center or a school that doesn't exist, or people who don't exist, because it's no longer a question of you signing off. No, there is a system and a process that requires you to go through to be approved to be an employee of government. And if that system is now corrupted, let me tell you, it means that the person at the entry and at the exit are all involved in ensure that these ghosts are part of the process and people are eating from them. And the parliament must take action and the people must pay back. Which reminds me of one of the biggest highlights of 2023 as far as ghost business is concerned, the OPM Mabati that was made for Karamoja. They signed these Mabatis. Yes. These Mabatis were sent to offices. And you could now they were received by quote-unquote some people. And who are those people that received them, Allana? And you could trace now. Yeah. You can trace the system, you can trace, yes.
But I think that corruption in this country is planned for. It's no longer like, oh, the money comes and because you know there are rules in public service. This is not a happenstance, you get it. So for this to be pulled off, it's a real syndicate of corruption. But also when you get to PDM, the ghosts are still there. According to OAG's report, 53 beneficiaries in 44 PDM circles had non-existent projects. So even at that level where the community itself is your check,
at the financing level, they are there. The banks to make sure that people receive them.
And the money was disbursed to these ghost things. Then afterwards they're like, oh, they are ghosts. Like, how long will this circle go on? Because there's a real cost to ordinary Ugandans. If you think about the money that was wasted in these ghost workers, what could it do for our education sector? Where the OAG's report actually it talks about the poor quality of learning in UPE schools, talks about the low capitation, talks about all the things we've been shouting about, the tight financing, among others. Okay. And then you have these ghost workers. So it shows that the fact that I've been hearing these ghosts, particularly in the payroll, since I was young, it just shows that again it's corruption that is planned for where someone knows they're going to benefit. And I'm very concerned because now I would expect the PSST to have taken strong action, because it's one of the things that he's the one looking at the overall picture. He knows that with government's current economic outlook, even maintaining its wage bill has been of concern, because like some we've been talking about, sometimes you're borrowing to pay wages, right? So why aren't you sitting there and addressing this? And in what world is this okay? So I think I want to speak to the president. I think you need to read this report yourself. No one should give you a summary. Sit down. If there's one thing you do this year, read this report and actually begin to take action, because we are tired. They present this to Parliament. Parliament itself has been kind of unearthing some of these issues.
Well, when you speak of action, as of yesterday, you did have the President of Nigeria taking action for their COP28. We were complaining about our 600. They took 1,400 to escort the President to COP. So, resolution to that, if the President has to move abroad, a limitation of up to 20 people is what he has been given to move with to anything. You know,
and that is Nigeria.
That is Nigeria. You know, Africa's biggest economy. Mr. Walugembe,
can I just say one thing on
Mr. Walugembe has to give us a closing remark. Speaking of action, the Speaker said they're going to, go back and make sure that they reflect on this report and take action. What are the recommendations that you have?
No, so the recommendations would be to look at each of the issues. If you look at public debt, we need to look at how it's contracted, and we also need to look at the priorities in terms of spending. We also need to look at minimizing borrowing domestically, and also ensuring that we borrow more from concessional lenders. And if we have antagonized any, like the World Bank, let's find ways of having discussions so that they get back on board. On the issue of negligence, mixing vaccines, expiry, certain people ought to be held to account, and competent managers need to be hired to ensure that that is not the case. On the issue of ghost workers, I mean, some of these people are retired, some of them are dead, some of them have absconded. So you must have a system that's able to track this. Now we have blockchain technology and so on. You know, there are many systems that you can ensure that this is reined in. And then you also have issues of overpayment, underpayment, illegal deduction. So it's very sophisticated. But I think PSST, because I see him emphasizing ICT a lot, I think can use some of these tools to ensure that they address. For Parliament, they shouldn't just be a backing dog. They need to actually come up with a clear plan. Say, okay, these are the issues that are raised by the Auditor General. This is what we recommend. Not just bringing cameras and then just squeezing people, like some kind of showmanship. No, they need to ensure that there's a clear action matrix that every Ugandan can follow, and that will satisfy us that these issues are being addressed.
All right. Is our economy resilient after all this that has been submitted on this table this morning? Well, it's something that only you can answer for yourself, by your contribution, assessing your own contribution to this Auditor General's report. Are you the one who's actually harboring the corruption, the planned corruption that was talked about, or are you the one who's willing to actually weed out that corruption from the system, and so that we can collectively be able to move forward economically, socially, as far as development is concerned? Marks the end of our program this morning. Thank you so much for being with us. Good day.